Welcome to the Global Current, your window to the world. Today we have a special roundtable discussion with representatives from the 4 political groups at Seton Hall University. I'm Reina Vita-Ronquillo, and I'm here with Noah Rothman, who will serve as the moderator for this debate.
Good morning and welcome to today's live debate. With us today is Jim McCabe, Vice President of the College Republicans.
Hello.
Shaina Tullo, Vice President of the College Democrats.
Hi.
Chris Colgan, Secretary for the Young Socialists for Democratic Change.
Good morning.
And Kevin Waterman, President for the Students for Individual Liberty.
Hey there.
Today's debate will consist of 2-minute answers for the following questions. Starting with you, Mr. McCabe, what, in your opinion, is the gravest challenge to this country domestically and economically, and how would your party recommend we best address this problem?
Well, I think the biggest challenge facing the nation domestically and economically is the economy itself. I think that it was a huge mistake under Jimmy Carter passing the Community Redevelopment Act and then again having it be renewed under President Bill Clinton, which allowed low-income families to receive loans that they would never be able to pay back. And, that's just a recipe for disaster. And as we've seen, we have all these loan companies crashing. We have a $700 billion bailout by the taxpayers. It's not right. It's not our responsibility to bail out these failing companies when it's the government's fault. Now, what can we do to move on? We need to have a sense of personal responsibility in the United States, and the government needs to learn its role, that it cannot be stepping in on the economy too much, because overregulation is clearly what has destroyed this economy. And I think that we've seen over this past week such a rise in the economy. We had the biggest market day since 1972, and that's saying something. The market is responding to the bailout. The bailout is going to work. However, the bailout shouldn't have happened to begin with, because when you look in retrospect, hindsight's always 20/20. And yes, it was a good-natured bill. But the Community Redevelopment Act should have never been passed.
Coming from the socialist standpoint, we believe the biggest problem that we as a nation face is the widening gap between the rich and the poor. Failing to address this issue and allowing more of the middle class to slip into poverty and those on the bottom rungs of the economic ladder to be left behind will lead us further into an oligarchic system that can only end poorly. It is in our national best interest to shift the power into the hands of the many, to eliminate poverty, and move toward a more equal system that is essential for our nation to continue to remain strong. If we ignore this fact, within a generation we will have a dualist class system where the few hold the yoke of power over the many, and it will not be long before that yoke is thrown off. Now, in terms of how Democratic Socialists would like to see this implemented, we believe that a truly progressive income tax, where the top percentage of Americans are taxed and within their range of economic standing to be able to live within their means and still contribute to the vitality of the economy, 75 to 85% tax for the top 1% of wealthy Americans, while the lowest 10% are taxed to within 1 and 5% of their incomes. We believe that would be the best way for all to contribute to the American economy while still maintaining equity and good standing for all.
We believe that one of the major problems, if not the major problem, is educational inequality. Individuals attending school in this nation aren't receiving fair and equal education as other individuals are. We see this in poor, lower socioeconomic districts. We see teachers not getting paid the right salary that they deserve, and most importantly, we see the No Child Left Behind Act, which is destroying teachers' creativity and disallowing them from truly teaching to their ability. And while it may seem that this is a back issue because it's placed on the back burner a lot in different elections, it really is the major issue that's perpetuating all of our problems, because when you don't have an educated youth, you don't have anyone that can clearly deal with the problems of tomorrow. And so through educating our children, through providing more educational opportunities for these children, then we'll have a greater base to help deal with these issues.
The actual, fundamental economic domestic threat, and it's a huge one, is entitlement spending. Under the current, regime of various entitlement programs in place, if not a single one were added, not a single, item of federal government spending was added, just the automatic increases that are already built into the system, by 2050, 40% of our GDP is going to be for federal spending, and by 2082, 75% of GDP. Funding that, I mean, to fund that, it's, you know, it's unheard of levels, pretty much, of, you know, federal spending as part of GDP. And to fund it, either by 2031, you know, our federal debt is going to be 109% of GDP, compared to about the 37% it was at the end of 2007. And, you know, according to the Congressional Budget Office, which did the study that, you know, found all this information, you know, by 2060, the economy would be in free fall if that were the case, with eroding income values and everything else, wages, everything along with that. The only alternative, you know, the main alternative to that is raising taxes to cover the gap. But the fact is, even if you expired the Bush tax cuts and expanded the AMT, it wouldn't be enough. And according to the CBO, it wouldn't even be enough to raise taxes to European levels of, you know, of taxation. I mean, basically, if they wanted to pay for it by 2050, individual and corporate income tax rates would have to rise by 90%. So, you know, for the bottom bracket, that's, you know, doubling. It's, you know, basically going from 10% to 19%. And if you're in the top bracket at 35%, that's taking their taxes all the way up to 66%. You know, so for a family of four, taking about $66,000, currently they pay about $3,100 in taxes. That's going to shoot up to $5,900. A $2,800 tax increase. It's far more than they can afford, and it's going to ruin the American economy.
Our candidates, although they may not share this political view, have been extremely conservative with the time that they've been allotted. We have a fair amount of extra time, so in the next question, please expand as much as you feel. I'll stop you if we need to. What do you envision will be the greatest threat to this country in the next 4 years internationally, and how would your party seek to address it? Mr. Waterman, we'll start with you.
I think, honestly, the largest threat we have is, you know, at least one of the largest ones is going to be tax competition. The U.S. currently has the highest, effectively, you know, second highest solely at the federal level. And when you incorporate in the states, you know, effectively the highest corporate income tax rate in the developed world. You know, some of the people like to argue that because of loopholes and stuff, it's lower. But the fact is, it doesn't change the function of incentives. When the tax rates are that high, either you incentivize, you know, wealth destroying, requiring people, you know, payments out to tax attorneys and tax lawyer or tax accountants, go and figure out every loophole possible. And what that's doing is, you know, rather than take that expense, a lot of companies are simply leaving for other shores. What we need to do is alter the tax rate. We need to go and, you know, lower the rates and broaden the base. So, you know, basically remove all the exemptions, move to a flat rate of tax of some, you know, flat rate income tax, flat rate that's low, you know, and it's fair and everything else. That at least something around, you know, about 25% to match with our European, you know, fellows who are about, you know, in the same GDP and otherwise economic level. Although ideally we should actually lower it even further to, you know, and raise our competitive edge, bring business back to America, and go and therefore advance forward economically and help push a taxation that's both fair and equitable.
So I understand, Mr. Waterman, your primary international focus is on taxation and broadly domestic taxation policies.
Well, it is, but I mean, because of the international focus it has, that, you know, the fact is, if we are unable to compete on in terms of our corporate tax levels, the more business we lose, the harder everything is going to be for America. It's just very much an international issue, especially in the globalized economy, where it's very easy for companies to pick up and move from one location to another.
Ms. Tullo, Vice President of the College Democrats.
I think one of the major problems that we're going to face is America's perception to other nations around the world. When you look at the certain things that are going on, take for instance with Iran, you see the two main scopes that we can take, and I think that the more effective manner of dealing with it would be, you know, incentive-based and engaging in an open dialogue. When you have something like granting them access to the WTO, that would be more beneficial to them and to the perception of America around the world than to, say, using force or to using negative implications for anything that they're doing. So when you have this more diplomatic approach to things, then people around the world begin to respect America again the way that we used to be as a country. And so when you have that, you sort of absolve all of the other issues that have been arising.
So, Ms. Tullo, you would advocate the membership for a WTO of member states that do not necessarily meet prerequisites as a measure of allowing them more participation and thus opening them up.
Correct, because when you cut off someone from engaging in a dialogue, then you're effectively setting them up